What's going on, guys? I'm Tyler, and in continuing my series of Disney movie reviews, I'm here to let you know that Pocahontas is no perfect movie. And in it, Pocahontas is the daughter of a tribal chief who comes across and falls in love with John Smith, played by Mel Gibson, who is part of a group of English settlers who are supposedly looking for gold. But when their superior, Governor Radcliffe, played by David Ogden Stiers, is encouraging them to go to war over the gold, it's up to Pocahontas and Smith to keep the peace between the group and discover whether or not the fight is even worth it. This was a movie that I never watched as a kid and had a couple opportunities. The most I ever saw of it was a trailer on a Lion King VHS that was just colors of the wind. That was it. That was all. That was supposed to build the momentum leading up to the release of the movie. And it was really effective. It's one of the trailers that I actually remember the most of. But even though my grandma had a cassette of the movie, I never watched it for whatever reason. And as an adult, I learned that there are things that, in retrospect, people really love about it, and things that they felt really missed the mark. And having seen the movie today, I can safely say it's really easy to see why. There are things that I love about this movie, and things that really do fall flat. But one of the things that really surprised me about this movie was Pocahontas. She's a character, and I say character because more on historical accuracy later, but she's a character who doesn't necessarily have an arc or really changes as a person, but she's one of those characters who changes other people around her through her perspective, through her wisdom, and not just John Smith, but people within her own tribe, even her father. And the character is brought to life by, I hope I'm saying this right, Irene Bedard, who gives a really good voiceover performance. As does Mel Gibson as John Smith. I wasn't expecting him to be a convincing leading man, but it's really easy to let Gibson's reputation dictate your expectations towards him, but people tend to forget. Mel Gibson does have a naturally soft voice, and his softness in his line delivery makes the character, even at his worst, seem very well-intentioned, because when he comes across Pocahontas for the first time, he wants to immediately change her way of life, not to step on her toes, but supposedly to help her. And it's one of those cases where he realizes that he's doing more harm than good, but he's realizing it before it's too late. And he's a surprisingly open-minded character. He's not a flat-out violent person. When he's hired to deal with Native Americans, his first objective is not to shoot them, it's to make peace with them, to learn about them. It just so happens that at first he wants to completely change their way of life because his way is the only one he's ever known. And when he meets Pocahontas for the first time and she calls him out for that, I think it's her bravery and her willingness to try to come to an understanding and to find common ground with each other, that the connection, the romantic connection anyways, works between the two of them. Because even though the animators give them way too many deep and dramatic I love you faces that kind of take you out of it here and there, it's that common ground that they build through the song Colors of the Wind that really sold me on the romance. And that's another thing that really surprised me about Pocahontas. The songs were really good. The lyrics sometimes were pretty preachy, and more on that later, but every musical sequence works just through the composition and through the visual sequences that are happening in the songs alone, especially Just Around the River Bend and Colors of the Wind. The actress who sings for Pocahontas, I believe her name is Judy Kuhn. If I said that wrong, please leave pronunciations in the comments. I really want to get it right in the future. She has a fantastic singing voice, and her voice fits the passion that Pocahontas is feeling during those songs. And out of all the side characters that get any screen time, the one that I really appreciated was Grandma Willow. It's weird that there's a talking tree, but all the animals don't talk, and it's a thing that people have never really understood about the movie, myself included, but as far as she goes as a character, I liked her as the mentor that every character has, and it beats the hell out of having a grandma who dies halfway through the movie, because, let's face it, that's a cliche that could have gotten written into this movie for sure. But she had a nice sense of humor. Her wisdom felt intuitive. It led to some spiritual beliefs that I'm not entirely sure are realistic, but they were at the very least interesting, and they had me invested in her conversations with Pocahontas. Now, as far as the messages go with this movie, there's no way to not talk about it because it is the central conflict of the story. And I think that there are things that work about this movie that are risky and take chances, and there are things that are really safe about it, and there are a lot more safe, easy ways out in this movie than I think there should have been. But the risks that they did take were, for one, the white settlers use casual ethnic slurs almost all the time, and some people are going to say, oh, well, that just makes us uncomfortable. Of course they make you uncomfortable. That is what slurs do. They rely on people fearing and hating the sound of them. And the movie understands that, and it's a risk that I admire Disney for taking. And the other is that even though the villain from beginning to end is a white colonialist who just cares about money, the movie's not afraid to show both the white settlers and the Native Americans as both seeing each other blindly as greedy and immediately prone to violence. And their solution, oddly enough, is by invading their privacy and going after them, killing them. It's a risk that could have gone sideways, but the movie was respectful in the fact that the natives only hold these beliefs because their land is being invaded. The settlers have more advanced weapons in a very unfair advantage. So you never root against the natives, but you understand the fact that they're not super clean, which is as close to real historical accuracy as you could get with this conflict, because that's where it stops there. The problems I have with the way they address this message is, for one, Radcliffe is just a boring, generic, greedy bastard who just wants money, and he's never an intimidating villain. He's not like Frollo, who believes his own racist bullshit but still takes pleasure in inflicting pain. He's just a guy who has dollar signs in his eyes. That's it. Two, there's a side character played by Christian Bale who starts off naive and innocent at the beginning and becomes more prejudiced as time goes by. And he does something that influences the climax in a way that I legitimately wasn't expecting. But then it's never addressed again. And I feel like Disney felt like they were concluding it in a forgive and forget way, but if that's what they were trying to do, A, they never made that clear, and B, it's not that simple of a solution. It was really complicated. And they keep saying this is a complicated situation, but they never really delve deeper than just saying that sentence. Which is interesting, because Bale's actions in the movie, they could have been interesting if they reflected on it for just a few more minutes. But the biggest problem is this one scene where the settlers and the natives meet and they're about to fight each other. But Pocahontas does this one act of kindness that everyone who is there, of course, sees, is motivated, and they change their minds about going after each other, except for one person, obviously. And I respect the fact that they leave in the fact that there's always going to be one person who is going to be a bigot, who is not going to listen to any facts because they don't want to. I love that that theme is in there. But in that situation, having only one person stay a prejudiced asshole made zero sense, and it also killed the suspense that it had going for it, because that scene, without spoiling what it is, had great build-up through this one really good song. Pocahontas is not about historical accuracy. If anything, this movie is about what should have happened historically. And it's not a bad idea to do, in all honesty. Yes, it's taking a lot of liberties, but movies are not history lessons. History lessons should come to us from school. But at the same time, in order for it to work, there needs to be a little bit of truth to it, and I felt like they could have added a little bit more, because what they gave us did weigh the movie down during the third act. But nonetheless, I gotta admit, I was entertained throughout the majority of the movie and pleasantly surprised by the voice acting and the songs. And the things that I was expecting to be good, like the animation and the overall musical score, were really good. So, despite how I felt about the message, I gotta admit, I had a smile on my face throughout the majority of the movie, and for those reasons, I'm gonna give Pocahontas a 3.5 out of 5. Guys, thanks as always for watching. If you've seen Pocahontas, let me know in the comments below what you thought of it. Be sure to stay tuned for more Disney reviews, and be sure to like and subscribe. Take care.